So we've got Carolyn Brown, Lucky in Love, and this is page 156, 157. We're starting at. Okay. I've been in love with you for 2 years, and I fell in love with Katie this morning before I even realized she was mine. I know what I'd like to do about us. Now, what would you like to do? Bo, you've been in love with a woman you created out of ashes of a disastrous night. You could make her think or say or do anything you dream because she wasn't there. I'm stubborn. I say what I think, and I'm not some sweet little angel on a puff of smoke who sugarcoats everything. I don't know if I love you. I don't even know if I like you. We've got a child, and yet you've never even courted me, except last night at the dance. And then you evidently were upset because you just been ditched by Amanda, needed someone to help to make you through the night. Give me till the summer, Millie, and I'll court you if that's what you want. At the end of summer, we'll talk about what kind of plans we can make as far as Katie's concerned. Is that fair enough? She thought about it for a while, a whole summer to worry about with this issue, when she usually didn't even think about anything more than 30 minutes, sometimes not even 30 seconds, like the issue with Amanda. She'd settle it right then and there. Besides the truck, if Bo hadn't liked the way she took care of it, then she would have been taken Katie and walked back to the Lazy Z. How could she spend the whole summer worrying about the outcome, and yet what a summer it would be? The thought of Bo actually courting her took her breath away. What other choice did she have? He knew about Katie now, and so did lots of other people. And he did have rights as a father, whether it broke her heart or not. But would it be courting Millie Torres as a woman or Millie Torres as the mother of his child? Fair enough, she nodded. Page 204. See, we're skipping a little bit to entice you to want to read this book, and that's good. A penny for your thoughts, he said. She set her empty glass on the rough wood and cart beside the swing. Cost you a lot more than that. He brushed the back of his hand across her bare arm, and as he put his glass beside her, the next second he gathered her into his arms and kissed her. No fanfare, no talk, no asking. Just a kiss that made both of them shudder like it always did. Could we try that just one more time? I know one of these times it's going to lack pizzazz, she said. It was always the same. Always had that pizzazz, just like the first one, that trailer that night. Okay, moving to page 219. While Katie slept, Millie packed in some time in the wee hours of the morning. She loaded their suitcases in the back of her pickup truck. The moon was big, full, and a white ball in the bed of twinkling stars, and she remembered another time waiting on the porch of the trailer for the taxi to arrive, but then memories couldn't make her stay. One did not ride a dead horse. When it died, one buried it and got on with life, and this relationship was dead. She didn't know if she killed it or if Bo was terribly in luck, really had murdered it, but someone had done so, and by golly, she was leaving. With a long sigh, she hitched up the horse trailer and in the darkness put Wildfire inside. She threw the saddle in the back of the truck beside the suitcases and then went back inside to pin a note to her grandparents asking them to forgive her for running out on them the rest of the summer, and then propped it up to the kitchen table. Her first idea was that she'd fly away in her airplane and never look back. But when she arrived at wherever she was going, she'd need something to drive. If she landed a job on the ranch, she'd need the horse. She thought about writing a note to Bo and even had pen in her hand, but just couldn't make her hands and mind work together to write the words that she knew would break his heart. She couldn't tell him why she was running away when she didn't even know herself. He never made any bones about the way he felt, but then neither had Matthew. That's her ex-husband. She didn't want to wake up some day and know that she ruined his life, and she just couldn't write it off on paper. Sometimes words could not explain the heart or its reasoning. What could she say? That he never hold his daughter again in his entire life, but that, too, was best for everyone? When he found out when she was gone, he would realize that there were no options, and that this was the only wise thing to do. In a few days he'd have another woman at the dance, maybe even Amanda, since she seemed eager to move back into his life a few weeks ago. Millie wiped away a tear as she thought about him being with Amanda, but even that didn't change her mind. She gathered Katie up in her arms and carried her downstairs and across the backyard to the barn, where the truck waited. Katy whimpered when she strapped her into the car seat, but she hushed quickly when Millie put the pacifier in her mouth. She fired up the engine, but didn't turn on the headlights until she pulled onto Highway 70 headed out east. "Miss Katy," she whispered, "we've cut strings now. You might be mad as hell at me in a few years because I didn't let you grow up with your daddy, but honey, it ain't going to work. Better to leave now than to have to hand him a divorce decree through a motel room door later. Someday." "Daddy with kidders?" Katy asked. "That's right, honey. Daddy is with the critters." Millie turned on the radio and argued with herself. "I've got to listen to the voice inside me, the one that tells me that something is not right with this. I knew it yesterday. Lord, it was pure ecstasy when he touched me, but there was more to the relationship than an hour in that back bedroom of a trailer house, or a romp in the hay. I'm doing what's best for me and my child." She caught Interstate 35 north toward Kansas and figured that when she reached the state line she'd decide whether she was going to Montana or Wyoming. She had a little cash and lots of plastic in her purse, and it wouldn't take her long to find a job. In a week or two she'd phone her parents and tell them that she was alive and well. Angels with golden halos were going to sell shares for time-share condos on the back side of hell before she would ever look at another man. She caught a glimpse of a falling star somewhere around the Purcell exit. She shut her eyes and tightly for a moment had wished desperately upon the star that she made the right decision. No matter if it was right or wrong, it was over now. She'd seen Bo that fatal Sunday when Amanda tried to inch back into his life. Contempt was written in stone on his face when he looked at the tall blonde beauty on the porch. There wasn't any doubt that she made her bed and now she'd have to sleep in it. He didn't give her a second chance. By the next barn dance at the Spencer's place, he'd be two-stepping with another woman and declaring she was the prettiest woman there. And Millie was just been a fleeting fancy in the unlucky days. She ached at that thought of him holding someone else. At daylight she passed the lights of Oklahoma City. 100 miles behind her, and several more to go, before she stopped at some motel for a few hours of sleep. Katy opened her eyes and spat out the pacifier. "Daddy, Daddy, my daddy," she said. "You won't remember that word for long," Millie said. "It'll fade like a memory, and that pretty soon will be just me and you, baby." They stopped at McDonald's. She changed Katy's diaper in the bathroom and changed her into a soft romper. She ordered the big country breakfast and fed Katy some hash browns, soft scrambled eggs, and sausage. She tried to bite the biscuit, but it was too much trouble to swallow past the lump in her throat, so she wrapped it back up. Maybe later she'd be able to eat, when there was more time and distance between her and the Barham Ranch. At 8 o'clock she passed the Perry exit. Granny and Poppy would have found her note by now. Bo might have slipped in the back to beg a biscuit like he did most Sunday mornings. He probably would be angry, but then maybe he wouldn't. He wasn't mad when Amanda broke off with him. He just walked up behind Millie in the barn and instantly was in love again. Perhaps he would go to church with Granny and Poppy, and by now that he would be in love with someone else. The radio DJ broke her thoughts, and now here's the song that brought CMA awards to Trisha Yearwood a few years ago. It rode to the top of the charts for several weeks. I knew she was going to bring home that glass the first time I heard it. And if she's not running this year with her very newest one, then I'll eat my hat and have dirty socks for dessert. Don't turn your dial, folks. Here is How Do I Live? And then we'll hear from Shania and our own Garth after that. 1 minute she was driving north and determined. That next face was bathed in tears, dripping off her cheeks and soaking the front of her chambray shirt. She started to weave onto the shoulder and jerked the track back into the highway. Finally she pulled over to the side of the road and laid her head on the steering wheel as she listened to that haunting country singer put the feelings into that song with the words of her heart. Her body was in a red-white pickup truck heading north to Montana or Wyoming or wherever the hell she could run to. But her soul had never left the southern part of that state, and there was no way she could survive with those two factions split in half. It was one thing when her soul and body argued, when her body wanted Bo to touch her, kiss her, and hug her, or just brush back his hand across her bare shoulder as he shooed away a mosquito, while her soul never wanted to trust a man again, but to never leave one part of the ranch in Oklahoma and take another to Montana was just asking too much. "What have I done, Lord? What have I done?" she sobbed Well, I know that what I've got to at least try and do. She fumbled in her purse for her cell phone, turned it on. It registered 10 calls from Poppy's number and 6 calls from Beau's. She said a silent prayer as she dialed the number and listened to a dozen rings. Evidently Granny and Poppy were at church. She wiped at her sleeve with her shirtless and she wiped at her eyes with her shirt sleeve and dialed the number to the bar inn. Please, God, let him be there, she whispered aloud as she listened for that buzz. It rang once and she shut her eyes. She deserved it, if he never wanted to see her or Katy again. The phone rang again, and she prayed harder. Everyone always picked up the phone on the second ring. It was some kind of unwritten social rule. Never pick it up on the first ring, but always pick up on the second. By the third, she began to worry. They weren't home. On the fifth ring, she heard Rosa's familiar voice. She fought the lump in her throat. Rosa, this is Millie. Is Beau there? Where are you, girl? Yes, he's here. He's out in the bunkhouse and won't even come in to eat. What did that boy do to make you so mad to run away? I'm ready to string him up, and he won't say a word. Buster says he's just lying out there staring at the ceiling. Where are you, Millie? I called over and over to talk to you and your granny, and said that she left you a note that you were on your way to find a job somewhere. Everyone is worried sick about you and that baby. Lord, we thought that this was written in the stars. Just get him on the phone, please, Millie begged. A moment later, she heard the squeaky hinge of the front screen door when he opened and slammed the big wooden door when he shut it behind him. She could instantly imagine him running his fingers through his blonde hair as he picked up the phone, probably to tell her to go to hell on a silver poker and not waste her time calling. Millie? She could feel the pain in his voice. Please don't talk, Beau. Don't say a word. Just listen. I made a big mistake. I got scared yesterday. I thought, she stammered. What, Millie? You just thought what? Just tell me what in the hell did you think? Raw pain was still there, but so was the old edge she heard when he thought she'd cut the fence between their properties. I did something really stupid, Beau. I compared you to Matthew, and in my mind you were going to run out on me and hurt me. I'm so sorry. I just want you to know that I'm wrong. You are fine and decent, and you're not Matthew. I'm coming, and he says, there's been a long silence, and she was prepared for the click of the phone and as he would hang up. Instead, and what are you going to do now? I'm coming home, Beau. I'll be back before supper time. I finally figured out that when it comes to you, I'm helpless. I'm hopelessly in love with you, and I intend to fight for the love, whether it takes standing up and fighting or dropping down on my knees and begging I love you. Her heart, mind, and body and soul were in agreement. That brought peace. Beau might throw it all back in her face, but at least Millie wasn't a disconnected being anymore. I'll be waiting at the bunkhouse for you. Come here and don't go to the Lazy Z. I'll call Jim and Mary and tell them that you're on your way back so they'll quit worrying. Drive careful and tell Katy that her daddy is waiting, he said. She heard a soft click as he hung up the phone without telling her he loved her. She caught the southbound lane back out onto I-35 and headed back to the face of the music. Beau was going to look at her so much like white trash beneath his feet and tell her that they needed to talk about when he could see his daughter and what the visitation rights would be, or he would tell her that he was going to get on with his life and find a woman he could trust, and they would have a house full of luckadoos, and he didn't want to acknowledge Katy at all. She stopped at a drive-by window for lunch, and by mid-afternoon she was on Highway 70, the last leg of her journey back to the same place that she couldn't wait to get away from only a few hours ago. By the time she pulled her truck into the circular driveway at Bar M, her bones were aching from driving all day, and her mind was much too numb from lack of sleep. Beau stood up the porch swing and walked slowly across the porch toward the truck. He opened the passenger door, took Katy right out of the car seat. Come here to Daddy, baby. Been a long day for my little girl. Bet you got saddle sores from sitting in that old car seat so long. Meet me in the den, Millie. He scarcely looked at her. Her heart rose up to her throat and tried to strangle her to death. The best scenario she imagined as she drove was one where she threw open the pickup door and folded her into his arms, telling her that he was scared to death and was begging her to promise never to leave him again. But that wasn't Beau, and she knew it. If it had been, she probably wouldn't be in love with him anyway. If he didn't challenge her every minute of every day, it wouldn't be long until their relationship, physical or otherwise, would be in shambles. She opened the truck door for herself and stretched the kinks out of her back before following him through the screen door, through the foyer, across the huge living room, decorated in an eclectic mixture of early American country, and into the den where a strange man sat behind a big, oversized desk in a front massive bookcase. Bo nodded toward the man, who stood up and extended his hand. "This is my lawyer, Mr. Anderson, and this is Millie, Camilla Torres. This is my daughter, Katie Scarlett." He turned Katie around so the lawyer could see her. He motioned toward the two dark green leather chairs that matched. The one lawyer was sitting there and Bo down in the other, but he didn't wait very long for her to sit first, and he didn't let go of Katie. She sat and waited for their explosion. As you know, Aunt Alice set things up kind of strange, but she had her reasons, I'm sure. As a matter of fact, all the Luckadoo properties came with the same prenup agreement. It's not that just this place. I cannot sell this ranch. It has to pass from me to my children and then to their children. And if my wife ever leaves me, she cannot ask for one 10-penny nail from the ranch. Do you understand that? Both this seems unimportant right now. I know about the way the ranch is set up. Granny Hilda told me about it, and I know that Amanda didn't like it. His blue eyes snapped as they finally stared into her brown eyes. "But you need to understand this." "Why?" she asked. "Because, Millie Torres, you have to sign that piece of paper, that you have to be fully aware of what is on it before you sign it. Everything I acquire other than this ranch you could ask for, if you ever leave me again, but this ranch is not set up for grabs." He explained, and she could see that this wasn't easy for him either. "But I told you I won't hold Katie over you. I won't contest. It's not just Katie we're talking about. It's us. I'm asking you to marry me, Millie. I love you with my whole heart and have for 2 years. I'm not going to leave you, not ever. But if you ever leave me again, you've got to know your rights." "You are what?" She couldn't believe her ears. He hadn't touched her, hadn't kissed her, or even hugged her. And here he was proposing? There was something wrong with his whole picture. Oh, yeah, there was something wrong with the whole picture, and last night, too. "I'm not going to give you an engagement ring, Millie. I don't want another engagement. I want a wife. I want you to be my wife. I want my daughter on the Bar M where she belongs, learning to take care of the cattle, learning to love the land that's going to be hers when I'm dead and gone. I'm not going to leave you, Millie. I'm not going to hurt you like Matthew did. I love you, and you can trust me. You've got my word on that. It's good as solid bar as gold, maybe even better. Matthew had gold, but no integrity. Don't judge him by me ever again, because I'm a different man. I love you. I said it before. I'll repeat it every day the rest of the day of my life. So if you want to marry me, just sign the papers and we'll talk about the rest of the problems that we're facing." She stared at him sitting there with their daughter, and he didn't move. Neither did Millie. They didn't reach across the span separating the two chairs and touch fingertips or stand up and fall into each other's arms with Katie between them. The world did not stand still, and the sun continued moving toward the west. The clocks didn't stop. It was just a normal day after all, except for the fact that he asked her to marry him and made promises that she believed in her with her whole heart. She picked up the pen and signed her name right below the lawyer's finger. "Now what else do we need to talk about?" she asked. "This." He set Katie on the floor and gathered Millie into his arms, hugged her so tightly that she could hear his own heart doing double time. He tipped her chin back and kissed her soundly. She shivered all the way to her toes. "Now, sir, Millie and Katie and I are going to go down to the corrals and have a long talk. Thank you for coming out here on a Sunday, and next time we'll have a barn dance. Bring your wife and join us." We're just about done, and then I'm going to give you a book rating. Knowing me, I'll leave you hanging, so it makes you want to read the book. Page 235. "So why did you name our daughter Katie Scarlett?" Bo asked when they were in the sky. And now just exactly why did he think of that now? All these weeks, and he never even asked about her choice of names. Have you ever read Gone with the Wind or seen the movie? It's old. Vivien Leigh and Clark Gable star in it. He shook his head. Saw a lot of old westerns on late-night television, but not that one. It's not a western. It's a story of the South after the Civil War, and the main character in it is Katie Scarlett O'Hara. She was full of spit and vinegar and steps right into a man's world and makes a place for herself at a time when it's not the right thing to do. "So you named our daughter after a fictional character." Millie set her jaw and challenged him with flashing brown eyes and drawn eyebrows. "Yes, and don't you think she can fill the shoes?" "I just think it's strange." He didn't back down from her gaze, but the battle lines were drawn, and even if he didn't win, he would have the fun of making up for it later. "Strange? I don't think a fine old Southern name like Katie Scarlett is strange," she huffed. "Katie Scarlett sounds like a character in a book. It doesn't sound like a real name. Now look at her, Millie. She looks like an Adelia or Ruth or something that has stability. Katie Scarlett sounds like it's a fine southern. The baby whipped her little head around and stared up at her mother with big blue eyes, and Millie giggled, realizing that every time they would say her name she would turn to see what they wanted. Besides, I couldn't very well name her Beau or Boetta now, could I? Or even Antoinette, since I didn't know your first name was Anthony. We weren't exactly dragging family skeletons out of the closet that night that she was conceived. I just picked out what I liked, and you can learn to live with it. Besides, my middle name is Catherine, and Katie is a nickname for that, she declared. I get to name the next one, then, he said. Over my dead body. The next one will be a joint effort and from start to finish. We'll agree on the name, and, dear heart, it won't be Anthony. Anthony was my great-uncle's name, Beau said sharply. I don't give a royal two-sided flip if it was the name of the governor or the great state of Texas, or if it was all the greatest rich man in the whole state of Louisiana. I'm not having a little boy named Anthony. Then we'll name our first daughter Tony with an I instead of a Y. They do that now, you know, name the girls' boys' names. He fanned the fires of anger just so he could watch her eyes dance. Amelia Tony Luckadoo. That has a nice ring to it. Then she'll be named after what I thought your name was, and me too. She rolled her eyes toward the ceiling of the plane. It almost worked. You almost made me mad enough to forget in a few minutes why I have to meet all of your relatives. He smiled and his dimple deepened. Who says I was joking? But we will be meeting them soon enough. I'll give you a few more minutes to reprieve, though. I told them that no one could come to the airport to get us. I've got a rental car reserved, and we'll drive out of the plane by ourselves. They drove north and back west to a sparsely populated area covered with gorgeous tall pine trees. Beau stole glances at Millie, and often noticed she kept straining her head to see the tops of the trees. Pretty impressive, aren't they? Sometimes when I look at the scrub oaks, I miss the elegance and the grandeur of the pines. Some of them are old as the land, I'm sure. He reached across the console and took his hand in hers. Just about the same time that Katie leaned forward in the car in the seat and upchucked everything that she'd eaten for the past 2 days. Good grief! Millie turned quickly. The medicine didn't work this time. Beau ran off the side of the road. What medicine? Is she all right? Do I need to turn around and go to the hospital? Millie was as calm as a midsummer breeze. No, she gets sick every time we fly, but most of the time she does pretty good if I give her medicine. Grab that box of tissues and the plastic trash sack, and I'll get this cleaned up in a short time. It's all right, sugar. Mommy's here, and we'll clean you up in a minute. Katie's sick, she said. Yuck. You must have flown with her a lot for this to affect her so little, he said. That's right, Millie said. Beau turned around in the seat and watched as she unzipped a suitcase, dragged out a bright red sunsuit with a matching red bonnet, a diaper, and a square box of baby wipes. In a few seconds she had Katie all cleaned, hugged several times, reassured a dozen more times, and back in a clean car seat. Then she also cleaned up the mess on the floor with a skill only a mother possesses, tied the top of the plastic bag holding all the nasty tissues and wipes of a double knot. Beau was slightly green around the mouth. Woo, you were pretty good at that. There's more to babies than just sweet-smelling baby lotion, picking out a cute little name. Katie has never flown well, but she'll be fine now. Once it's all out of her system, she'll be hungry as a bear. Beau put his hand over his own mouth and tried to block thoughts of food entering his mouth. I think I'll put that sweet-smelling baby lotion on the kids, and you can do the clean-up stuff. I always had a weak stomach when it comes to upchucking, and I hate to fly, too. Oh, no, big boy, you can make 'em. If you can make 'em, you can help with a whole ball of wax. You name one boy or girl Anthony or Tony, and I hereby promise that I'll hide the medicine when we fly. Reason I don't like that name is because Amanda called you that. Like Beau was beneath her dignity, and I didn't like the way she said it. Now fire this bus up and let's get to eat all that food that you promised me. You did say that there would be potato salad, baked beans, and enough brisket to feed Sherman's march to the sea. And did I hear something about coconut cream pie? If you say another word, you vixen, I'm going to do what Katie did. He checked the rearview mirror and pulled out onto the highway. So that's where she got her weak stomach. We have Torres and Jimenez folks that can talk about heartworm's castration while eating a plate of spaghetti and meatballs. We wondered why she upchucks so easily. I swear, Millie, if you don't hush. He covered his mouth again, and a little funny gaggy sound crawled out of his sexy mouth. All right, shouldn't said enough men folks are stronger sex. Ha! By the time they reached the ranch, his color was almost normal. The faint green around his mouth was subsiding, and his face didn't look as if he would waken from a nightmare to see a ghost curled up on the pillow next to him. When he drove into the driveway, people came out from every corner. Millie had suddenly urged to lock the doors and refused to get out of the van. He opened the car door for her at first, and then took the smiling baby from the car seat. He put his arm around Millie, and all three of them went in to face the lion's den. Okay, I'm going to leave you with some burning questions because I want you to read this amazing book. How did his family take to meeting little Katie Scarlett? And do they actually get married? Does Amanda come back? Does Matthew come back? Do they beat all odds? Well, the only answers to those questions, the way you're going to find the answers to those questions, is read this amazing book. I really enjoy Carolyn Brown books. She always mentions a country music song or two. The characters have real-life situations that seem just so realistic, and it's a great job of reading. Keep up the amazing work, Carolyn Brown, and this book rating gets an 8. So that's a must-read situation for you all. So make sure that you check this book out. This one is going to the book bag to be donated to the Candy Kitchen, because I've decided that once I read a book, I'm probably never going to get to meet the authors, and I'm getting older. There's no reason to keep all these books around, so as I read them, I will donate them so they can have another life and bring as much joy and happiness to other readers, I hope, as they have brought me. Well, if you're counting, we've done 3 videos. We have one more to do. Stay tuned.